All right, welcome back, everyone. We are very excited to be having this session on doing business with the state. And I have the pleasure of announcing our two guests here. We have Tammy Hall with the U.S. Department of Administration, Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses. Tammy is responsible for developing policy and guidelines for the state's HUB program and is the authority in the field of minority business development. Tammy has over 20 years of experience in state government, and 8 of those was as a congressional staffer. And then we also have John Gunther, who's a compliance officer with the Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses since 2015. John supports state agencies on construction projects, finding vendors, provides training, as well as purchasing of goods and services. He has a master's in public administration from NC State. So go Wolfpack. Thanks so much, Tammy and John, for being here. So go ahead and take it away.
Hi, thank you, Christian. It is always a pleasure to be here supporting the work of the Institute, and certainly here at the 2021 Moving Forward with Purpose Conference. I think I've been at several of these now. And so to all of our listening audience, we hope that you will find something from this session that will motivate you to get involved in state government contracting. It is certainly our perspective here in state government, and certainly the governor and the administration's perspective, that all businesses have an opportunity to participate in the supply chain in state government. We procure over $8 billion in goods and services, and for construction, it's close to somewhere like $4 billion or more. If you think about all of the agencies that we service. So thank you all for attending and for particularly being at this session. And so I have my expert in-house to help me today to present to you information regarding our program that you may or may not know, but certainly I will come back to you a little bit later and talk in depth around our disparity study, which we have conducted. And we've not conducted a disparity study in this state in over a decade. And so we're very grateful to the opportunity, and certainly for Governor Cooper's and the administration's pursuit of this study and providing the funding that we needed. So we're grateful for all of those opportunities. So I think at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my in-house resident expert, Mr. John Gunther.
All right, hello everybody. I'm John Gunther. I'm the compliance officer in the North Carolina Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses. And we've got a little slideshow here for you today. I'm hoping Tammy can nod if she can see it. I've shared my screen. Okay, great. So we're going to talk about doing business with the state today. And we're going to talk a little bit first by giving you a little overview of the HUB office itself. So we're going to start with HUB certification. So HUB certification is governed by North Carolina General Statute 143-128.4, and to be a HUB requires that the firm be owned 51% or more by individuals in the certification categories, which are Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female, disabled, and disadvantaged. In addition to ownership, the firm must be controlled by at least one owner in those categories. So you can't have an absentee owner that owns 100% of it, but just says one of your staff people, you run the day-to-day stuff. They have to be involved in control and decision-making about the way that the company is going to work. Certification lasts for 4 years. And every 4 years, there's an option to recertify for another 4 years. And we do let people know ahead of time that their certification is coming to an end so they can recertify. It takes 45 to 90 days to get certified. We can expedite that on occasion, but it's not necessarily a recommended tactic normally. So we hope that people will plan for it and try to get ahead of the time where they need that in terms of getting a contract. There is no fee to be certified. And there are a couple of categories on this slide that we actually don't certify, but we capture the dollars for. And those are disabled business enterprise and nonprofit work centers for the blind and severely disabled. Those are categories that are nonprofits. We actually do not certify nonprofits, but these are self-designations in the electronic vendor portal system registration. So you may notice that the acronym for disabled business enterprise is DBE. Please do not confuse that with the DOT, disadvantaged business enterprise. Those are two different things. So the certification process, it's a three-step process. You register in EVP, you need to register for IPS and Hub, and you have the option to register for e-procurement. Step 2 would be to submit a completed and signed statewide uniform certification application, and the link to that page is listed on the slide. Then also submit required documents. So it's a three-step process. Once people register on EVP, they also have to complete the application and submit the required documents. We do have reciprocity options available for vendors who are certified by certain other organizations like NCDOT's DBE program or US Small Business Administration 8A. We do have a few others. That makes it easier to certify. The application is one page long, and there are fewer documents that have to be provided to go along with that. Basically, they've already gone through a pretty intense process, and we trust those those certification entities to be able to certify that those entities would meet our requirements as well as their own. Hub certifications, we certify anywhere from 100 to 200 entities each month. This is certifications and recertifications. There was a bump in October because of the Retool NC program, which was a grant program for small certified hub vendors or certified DBEs in order to get some grant funding related to COVID-19 impacts on their businesses. But as of this morning, we just crossed the 4,900 hub firm threshold. So we've been pushing for several years to get those numbers of certified hub vendors up. So we are at 4,901 as of this morning. We're very excited about that. When we look at the certification categories, we also take a look at percentage of those that are female. When we certify, we just certify initially on the minority categories. So if Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, if a company falls into those categories, that's what they're certified for. We don't go further and also certify them as female or also as disabled or disadvantaged. They just get one certification category. But we do have information that allows us to take a look at our certifications to see what percentage of firms are female owned in those categories. So it's in between 33% and 42% in the minority categories that are owned by females. So a little bit about the Hub Office, the Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses. We are part of the North Carolina Department of Administration. We promote diversity and inclusion in state government procurement and contracting. And the main roles of the Hub Office include Hub certification, encouraging the use of historically underutilized businesses, providing business development services to Hub vendors, collecting reports on construction spending and goods and services purchases from North Carolina state and local government entities. So the Hub Office, when it comes to good faith efforts, the Hub Office meets regularly with purchasing directors and capital project coordinators from state agencies and community colleges. We help state agencies and local governments find designers, contractors, and subcontractors, and Hub providers of goods and services. We attend pre-bid meetings to discuss Hub good faith effort requirements. review good faith effort documentation on building construction projects, and participate in interview panels for hub designers and contract management at risk. We also encourage hubs to bid on state term contracts. And the good faith effort, we're trying to make sure that hub vendors get a shot at getting the work. And good faith efforts is proving that you've reached out to hub vendors, you've done all you can to include them in that process. So providing business development services to hub vendors is something that the hub office does as well. We offer business assessments for strengths and areas for growth. We refer hub vendors to resources for strengthening businesses. We facilitate hub vendor orientation trainings for new hub vendors. And in 2020, we conducted 7 webinars and 4 webinars in 2021 with the US Small Business Administration talking about disaster loan resources related to COVID-19. We hosted an 8-week webinar series on financial wellness for entrepreneurs. We sponsored a 4-week virtual lunch and learn series for hub general contractors. And we managed the Retool NC program, distributing over $13 million in grants to small certified hubs or DOT disadvantaged business enterprises. We collect reports on construction spending and goods and services purchases. We collect quarterly reports on both goods and services and construction spending. And we produce a quarterly hub performance report on cabinet agency progress and an annual hub performance report on all state and local agencies. We publish a detailed annual report of hub usage by public entities and certification categories, so you can see by individual agency how much they spent with each individual hub certification category. We provide regular feedback to state agencies on their progress towards the 10% goal, and we provide training to state and local governments on good faith efforts and reporting requirements. Executive Order 143 was signed June 4th, 2020. It established the Andrea Harris Social, Economic, Environmental, and Health Equity Task Force. There's many things that this task force does, but one of the items that we deal with on the economic aspect of that is it established the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office to ensure COVID-19 relief was distributed equitably in coordination with Golden Leaf Foundation and the North Carolina Rural Center. And one of the other things that it does is at least one bid or proposal from certified hubs for projects $250,000 or less are required, or an exception must be approved by the Secretary of the Department of Administration or the Secretary's designee. So you can't just say, oops, nope, we didn't have any hub vendors. There has to be some effort going into finding hub vendors on those small projects. So a lot of the hub vendors out there are small businesses, and the point of this is to get more opportunity for those small hub vendors to get work with the state and to help us recover from the pandemic impacts. So Tammy, this next slide is about the disparity study. Would you like to take over at this point?
Sure, thank you, John. You have done a tremendous job sharing with our audience some of the aspects of the hub office. One of those that I am tremendously excited about, as I spoke earlier, was particularly the disparity study report. The report that we conducted took about 18 months to complete. And from that study, we learned a number of things. The study can be found on our website. It's available, and we have one more public hearing that we will be hosting, which is on March 16th. But the study included data from 29 state agencies, 58 community colleges, 21 public universities, institutions, and it actually goes over a 4-year fiscal time period. It included all of the industry categories that we cover, to include construction, architectural and engineering, professional services, other services, and goods. Next slide, please. So the overall findings is based on what is known as a regression analysis, which found that disparities by race, ethnicity, or gender status of the firm's owner remained after controlling for capacity and other race and gender neutral factors. So there were a number of components that went into determining whether we had disparities. This statistical evidence found support in the anecdotal and marketplace disparities evidence. Next slide, please. So from those findings, the disparity study team came up with a number of recommendations for us to consider in state government and then ultimately to implement. One of the first recommendations is that we strengthen the HUB program by including full-time HUB coordinators, HUB liaisons, HUB directors within each agency to also strengthen the HUB office enforcement authority. So we want a point of contact in each state agency that is there specifically to address inclusion and diversity efforts from a business perspective, to also be that point of contact for minority and women-owned businesses, so you know exactly who to reach out to determine what opportunities may exist. There is also a recommendation to review and revise home rule requirements to give local jurisdictions more flexibility in applying good faith efforts and establishing small business reserve programs. What this means is currently for construction, we have a 50-point good faith effort analysis that must be checked off to ensure that contractors have made the efforts. Well, what we've heard from our practitioners is that sometimes that 50 points can be very mechanical. Like for instance, a contractor could get 10 points for sending an email to a list of 100 vendors saying I have an opportunity. Well, in real time and real experience, how personable is that? I mean, how many of us don't receive emails from, any and everybody? So we felt that just sending an email out was really not a true effort to solicit a HUB vendor unless you put some effort and some teeth behind it. And so because of that, we also wanted to allow HUB practitioners to determine what other data they may need to consider whether or not true good faith efforts had been made. And the only way we do that is by adding into our administrative code some flexibility for interpretation of good faith efforts. The Small Business Reserve Program really goes back to the program that EO 143 required the HUB office to do, which was to develop a small business enterprise program. But currently there is legislation on the books that prohibits any of our municipalities from establishing a small business program without getting either delegation approval or General Assembly approval. And we believe that a small business program, if operated in the right manners, could be the answer for running a race neutral based diversity program. And we've seen good results around the country for small business programs. The third recommendation is to institute MWBE subcontracting goals in addition to annual goals based upon availability. So what this particular recommendation says is that we would set one goal across the board, similar to what we do now. We have a 10% goal, so we would set a goal across the board. But for larger projects, we would institute project by project goals, which would require us to have a good faith, a goal setting committee that would determine what the goals should be on those very large projects. So, and we found that to be very advantageous as well across the country. Next slide, there we go. So recommendation number 4 says require robust good faith efforts If a firm do not meet the goal, they must prove meaningful good faith efforts and not just that they checked off 50 points. And you heard me allude to this earlier as I was talking about allowing more flexibility for interpretation of good faith efforts. It also requires you to do something extra. If we are to be intentional about diversifying our supply chain, that requires us to do something different. And it requires us to do extra work per se to get those goals and the types of efforts that we like, meaningful efforts that we'd like to see done on various projects. Recommendation number 5 says, institute size standards for hub certification to benefit smaller MWBE firms. So this particular recommendation is still under consideration, but what we've also seen across the country is that particularly of advantage would be to define a small business standard for hub certification. So, specifically, we talked about the SBA's size standards for a number of their initiatives. It could be 500 employees and the dollar revenue is very large. So we're looking at some options for whether or not it makes sense for us to add size standards to our hub program. So that particular recommendation is still under review. Recommendation number 6, create a small business reserve program that allows only small businesses to bid on certain size contracts. And what this particular recommendation is, and it refers to our small business program as a small business reserve program. But you heard me mention earlier, EO 143 required us to establish a small business enterprise program. And so what this particular recommendation means is that we would determine a set particular particular contracts that would fit into the realm of solicitation for small businesses only, and allow those businesses to compete head to head. So allow them to compete only amongst themselves. And of course, the state operates on the lowest responsible bidder. And so the same scenario would be in place, but it would just be small businesses competing against each other. And for those of you that may ask, well, what does our current small business enterprise program criteria comprised of? So currently the small business program for the state of North Carolina is a program that indicates 100 or less employees, and then the revenue is 1.5 million or less for that particular company. So those are the parameters that we have currently around our small business enterprise program. Recommendation number 7, provide or facilitate supportive services to better assist hub firms to be better prepared to bid on state contracts. So this particular recommendation just reinforces much of the work that the hub office is already doing in terms of training and webinars. You heard John talk earlier about a number of the webinars and training programs that we offer. This particular recommendation is really a commendation as well, in that we received high rankings for the programs that we have successfully operated, but certainly there's always room for improvement and to enhance what we're currently doing. And so that's particularly what this recommendation addresses. Recommendation number 8, implement mandatory subcontracting goals on large contracts to create more opportunity. So across the board, we want mandatory subcontracting. So regardless of industry, regardless of type of item, we believe that subcontracting goals would be applicable. Now, where we know we struggle is in goods. We have always historically struggled in identifying subcontractors on our goods. But what we know is that our larger purchases, whether that's our office supplies or furniture contracts, and even cars and things of that nature. Those larger purchases have subcontracting opportunities, and we would like to see mandatory subcontracting across the board on those types of opportunities. Number 9, continue to review bonding and insurance requirements to make sure required levels are necessary. We also receive commendations in this area as well, because North Carolina has done a really good job of taking a look at the bonding requirements and adjusting them where we felt necessary to meet the goals of our construction industry. At one point, I know maybe about a decade or 10 years ago or so, our bonding limits were at 300,000, and now our bonding limits for construction projects has been increased to $500,000, which has been very well received in the contracting community. Next slide, please. Number 10, recommendation speaks to utilizing a balanced scorecard to closely monitor utilization and establish measures of accountability for hub firm growth. And so what we know is if we don't measure it, we can't understand it. So if we don't put in place some performance measures and benchmark where we are, we have no trajectory to look forward to down the road. And so many of you that have had the opportunity to meet Secretary Michelle Sanders, who is now the Secretary of Department of Commerce, and we're so extremely proud of her. But prior to leaving from Department of Administration, she was a fierce leading supporter of benchmarking. And so as a result of that, the Hub Office benchmarks every quarter participation and how we are ranking in terms of meeting our goals. And then we use that benchmark to determine what we could do better within the next quarter to address where our deficits were. So balanced scorecard will be quite handy. And then we'll be able to actually track success from some of the webinars and trainings that we're conducting. We want to know how many hub firms are getting opportunities. We want to know your success rates, and we want to be able to share the good news. And so we get that through putting together a very balanced scorecard. We also, the ultimate goal is that we grow and develop and expand our hub database so that you become competitive with the best of contracting world. Number 11, apply remedial programs consistently wherever state dollars are expended. And basically what this says is that the consultant said, regardless of where the state is spending its money, if it's $1, that particular agency should be running a hub program. So we want hub programs all throughout the state, wherever we are spending our state dollars. And so that's particularly what that goal addresses, or that recommendation addresses. And then finally, it's not in the form of a per se recommendation, but it is the most important of all of the recommendations, is data reform. We found that our data was, I can't even explain, it was in some unforeseeable places for sure. We had to go turn over every rock, look under every corner to try to find the data we needed to just tell us who have we, meaning the state of North Carolina, who are we doing business with? And so we found comfort in records that we were able to get receipt of from the state comptroller's office. So for our cabinet agencies, the state comptroller's office was able to provide that particular data for us. Our colleges and universities, every university's comptroller's office sent us their payment data. Same thing for our community colleges. But the ability for us to get that data was extremely difficult. But we managed to stay steadfast, and we finished the project with every particular entity that was included in the study. providing their data. So what you will find as a part of the disparity study is a recommendation for data reform, maintain a uniform data collection repository system. Data is kept inconsistently, both in what is kept and how it is kept, meaning we may have had information on a majority firm that received an award, but we didn't have subcontractor data on who else he may have paid as a result of that particular project. And so that was a little daunting for us. Number two, centralized access to data for community colleges and universities. There's no centralized source that keeps procurement or payment data. The consultants, Griffin and Strong, has had to go to each community college and university separately to get data. Number three, capture all award data. We should be capturing all award data. All of our consultants, all of our contractors, we should be very aware of who those vendors are. Award data is not consistently captured in some community colleges, and universities do not keep any records unless it comes through the state construction office. And then state construction office did not have it in an electronic format. So that meant we had bodies over there making copies of data that state construction had. And then the third, well, it says third, but it's actually the fourth data reform recommendation is that you track all subcontractor data. So MWBE and non-MWBE. Many of you in the listening audience may have often heard, many times you go to a public hearing or meeting, the first question is usually, what's the MWBE participation? But we should be asking both. What's the MWBE, what's the hub participation, and then what's the non-hub participation? So that we can really see the difference in the percentages. And it says this particularly is important with the new program elements. So it's really important as we roll out this new program, new enhancements of the hub program, we really need to capture all of this data. Next slide, John, please. Now I'm turning it back over to John, and I'll come back to you at the end. Cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Appreciate you going through the disparity study like that. So when it comes to finding hub vendors, there are a few different ways to do it, but probably the most official way is to use the statewide uniform certification search for vendor information. The link is shown on the slide here, and you can find it from the hub office website as well. You can find it directly off of there. All firms in this search are certified firms, and the counts do change frequently, and they can change from a day-to-day basis. You can search by company name, city, county, commodities, and construction specialties. Other ways to find hub vendors, you can post requests for bids. You can post on the IPS, the North Carolina, well, actually only state agencies can and local governments can post on IPS, the Interactive Purchasing System. But the hub office also posts bid opportunities, and anyone can submit a bid opportunity. We have state agencies do that, school systems, community colleges, universities, contractors submit there. We've had a church submit a bid opportunity for one of their projects. So anyone can submit there. We do ask for a minimum of 12 days of notice from when the bid's submitted to, or not when the bid is submitted, but the request to post this is submitted to when the award is due. 2 of those days are for us to post them. It's a sort of a manual process. So we do have to go in there and take the information that is put into a form and put it on the website. And then the other 10 days are so that people actually have an opportunity to read the bid, understand the bid, see if it's a good fit for them, and then provide a reasonable bid and price to the solicitor. So we do ask that the following language be included. If it's not in there, we'll make sure it is, but Hub certified contractors are encouraged to submit a bid for this project. We make sure that's on pretty much every bid that goes up there. And when we pulled this, I think this was yesterday that we pulled this screen capture, there were 202 upcoming events posted on the website. So there are a lot of opportunities there, and it is searchable. You can search by, just type in whatever you want to search on, and it will look for it anywhere in the bid opportunity. So it's not just looking at who is posting the bid, but also items in the bid itself. And the bid submission address is there. And we've got North Carolina goods and services spending. There is a 10% goal set by executive order. And this is reported to the Hub office on a quarterly basis. It's reported by state agencies, community colleges, public universities, and school systems. In fiscal year 1920, we spent a total of $8 billion, that's billion with a B, on goods and services, and 402 million of that was with Hub vendors. And so the percentage of that spending comes to a total of 5.02%. So as a state, we are not achieving that 10% goal. There may be individual entities that are, but as a state, we're not. Only certified Hub vendors count towards the Hub dollars and Hub percentage. So if somebody is a woman-owned business, but they're not certified, or they've let their certification lapse, then they don't count towards those dollars and that percentage. On the construction and design side, again, the goal is 10% for based on General Statute 143, 128.2. And the construction spending was $784 million last year, with 153 from Hub vendors. And that's about 19.6% Hub participation. That's over the goal. Not everybody achieves that goal, but as a state, we achieved that last fiscal year. On the design side, we also exceeded the 10% goal with 12.67%, and that was with $55 million total design spending, and spending with Hub vendors was at $6.9 million. Again, only certified Hubs count towards Hub dollars and Hub percentage. And this next set of slides is doing business with the state of North Carolina for goods and services, specifically goods and services. And these are courtesy of Meredith Swartz, Purchasing Director of the North Carolina Department of Administration, and a full recording of Meredith's Hub Vendor Orientation Purchasing 101 presentation can be viewed on the Hub office's website video training recap section, and the link is provided there. By the way, yes,
can I
Kristen.
jump in here real quick? I
Please
think
do.
that's a great place to just send people to watch that, because just for the sake of time, we have a bunch of great questions for you all. Can we jump into those? Is that okay?
Sure, sure.
Awesome. Okay. So the first question that we have is, if 2 or more Hub certified firms come together as a joint venture on a state contract, along with a variety of Hub subcontractors, does that offer the contractor, besides enhanced performance value, any additional leverage in Hub reporting requirements?
It doesn't really. When we look at joint ventures to be considered Hub, they would have to be certified too. And then we would look at the way that the system does it. It looks first at seeing if the general contractor is a Hub, and then if not, it'll look at the Hub vendors that are subcontractors to them. So Hub vendors do need to look for other Hub vendors to subcontract with, but it's not necessarily a bonus. You don't get 200% because you're a joint venture using Hub certified subcontractors.
Okay, great. All right, the next one. If a minority or women-owned business, now Hub certified, resides in North Carolina area where local or regional Hub coordinators are limited or not available, where can they go to build their Hub profile and business development?
Well, it kind of depends what you mean by Hub profile. In the electronic vendor portal system, there is a profile that each company has, and that's whether they're Hubs or not. Anybody registered in EVP gets to go in there and say where they're located, who their contacts are, and then they get to go through and say what commodity codes they perform or what construction codes they perform. So that creates that profile, but I'm not sure that's exactly what this individual is asking. They may be talking about saying, you know, how do we build up our case that we are a competent company that you should do business with? If there is not a hub coordinator at a particular entity, I would probably, depending on the kind of project there or kind of services you provide, if you are a construction-oriented company, then you want to look at their capital projects group. Anybody who is in charge of building buildings, doing repairs or renovations, you want to get in touch with those managers of those projects. At a lot of the community colleges or universities, they have capital project coordinators. And if they have no hub coordinator, that would be the person that I would recommend you go to on the construction side. On goods and services, probably their purchasing director would be the person to reach out to. The purchasing director doesn't create the needs, but they fulfill the needs that end users identify. But the purchasing director is the one that would have to say, okay, we're actually going to put this out for bid and probably manage that process.
Okay, great. And Dan, if that did not answer specifically what you were looking for, feel free to jump back in with another follow-up question, okay? All right, next one. What is the expected time required for hub application processing, assuming a completed package with all items is addressed?
The standard that we say is 45 to 90 days. So once we get a completed full package, expect it to take 45 to 90 days. It doesn't always take that long. And there may be some cases where we can speed that up a little bit. But that is one reason that I suggest that you plan ahead and you get that certification before you need it, so that you don't have to be sitting there going, is it done yet? Is it done yet?
Okay, great. And he also said the last question was answered well, so thank you.
Okay.
All right, next one. If the owner of a long-term hub firm decides to sell the business, is it correct that the new owners will have to go through a new hub eligibility?
It depends on the situation, but yes, sometimes that means that people who are already owners of the business get a greater share of the business. And sometimes it means that there are new owners who have come in, and we will have to evaluate that situation. So we will need the information that would tell us who owns what and who controls what. So we would, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to go through the whole application process again, but they do need to notify us of that. And we will need to understand who owns what and the controlling aspect of it.
Okay, great. All right, the next one, based on the disparity implementation plan, will any of the implementation tasks be placed out for bid? For example, building systems that will allow the collection, storage, and use of data.
Right, so I'll jump in and answer that question. It all depends. We're looking at all avenues. Of course, you know, for us, the least of expensive route would be for us to take a look internally to see if systems are available that will drive the output of what we need. But ultimately, if the need is that we should go out, we will put an RFP out on the street for any and everyone that is in that particular industry to provide responses.
Okay, great. And then the last one that we have here, but we do have a little bit of time for more if anyone wants to drop another question in the Q&A feature. But the one we have here is, what kinds of businesses are most likely to take advantage of a hub certification?
That's a great question. We've got 4,900 certified vendors. I'm not sure that there is one industry overall that dominates that. We have a lot of construction-oriented firms, but that doesn't mean that they're the majority. of that, we have firms that do almost everything. So we've got accounting firms, we've got architects, we've got engineers, we've got janitorial, we've got other professional services, marketing, accounting, all sorts of things. We've got nursing, staffing, so that we do some staffing kind of services. I wouldn't say that they're, the majority of what we do. They're just some industries that are coming to mind. So I don't think there is one particular industry that dominates when it comes to hub certification.
Okay, and maybe even as a follow-up question to that, are there any industries that may normally count themselves out or think they're not needed that you would be looking for?
We don't have very many farmers that are certified, and we know that there are state agencies that look for farmers. We know that DPS, Department of Public Safety, they have the corrections jails that they do, the prisons. They have to get fresh food. They have to feed their inmates. So they do specifically look for people who can provide fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. So that is probably the area that comes to mind top that says we don't have very many farmers that are hub certified.
Interesting. Okay, well, we do not have any more questions. Do either of you have a final thought that you might want to leave everyone with?
If you're not certified, come and get it. Get certified, please.
And I would close out by saying many of you that are probably hub certified or your DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise certified, participated in round 1 and 2 of Retool NC. So if you've been following the General Assembly, then you would realize that there is a round 3 coming. We had $8 million in one of the most recent bills through the General Assembly. And so we'll certainly be looking to provide additional funding. So if you're not certified, you may want to get certified.
All right, and I needed to refresh my screen. We actually do have one more question that popped in. How does this program work for small municipalities, for instance, population of about 10,000 or so in North Carolina? Is there a minimum amount of required business to be done?
There's not really a minimum amount of business that somebody needs to do in order to run a program. When it comes to the construction side of things, if a project is $30,000 or more, it has to be reported on. That is in the statute. There are many entities like DPS reports way lower than that, and they seek out participation on a more formal basis at a lower level than that. But if it's a construction project, $30,000 is where they have to seek out minority participation. That's informal. But I hope that answers the question. I'm not totally sure it does.
Gotcha. And if it does not, you all reach out to either Tammy or John. Again, their information is in the speaker section of the platform that you are all on. I'm sure that you can reach out to them for directly with their information or whatever questions you might have. You both have lots of thank yous and encouraging certification in the chat there. Thank you all so much for your time, everybody, for your questions. That was wonderful. And so we have another short intermission, and then we will have one final link for the last money section of today. So in about, well, at 3:30, we'll jump back in for both financial business opportunities as well as business banking with your local credit union. So stay tuned for that. But again, John and Tammy, thank you both very much for your time and expertise.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.